Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I'm going to tell you how to use shadow work to discover your life's purpose. Alright, so in this video I'll be sharing with you how to use shadow work to discover your life's purpose, but let me just describe a little bit about what shadow work is first. So what shadow work refers to is it's the act of making the unconscious conscious so that you can reintegrate aspects of the personality that have been repressed. So in this way, shadow work can be thought in kind of a versatile way where it's basically any process that makes things that are unconscious to you about yourself conscious to you once again. Now, oftentimes when we think about shadow work, we think about like going really deep and dredging up old traumas and repressed memories and things like that. And that certainly can be shadow work. But oftentimes shadow work is actually just looking in the place where the sun doesn't shine, being able to spot your blind spots and to be able to see into those blind spots. For example, let's say that as part of my worldview, I believe that the things that are worth pursuing and worth being interested in are very serious and very logical and have a lot to do with logistics. Well, what this can do is this can put my attention in a particular direction when it comes to deciding what it is that I want to do with my life. And so that might cause me to actually go unconscious to parts of myself that might want to do something a little bit more divergent or creative or things like this. And it isn't even necessary that that part is repressed because of some big trauma or unmet need or anything like that. It can just be because I just value this thing instead of that thing. And so when it comes to finding our life's purpose or what it is that we would like to focus on in our lives, what kind of trajectory that we would like to take, sometimes it's the case that we can have parts of ourselves that are repressed due to traumas and unmet needs that we might need to get back in touch with to gain more intel about what it is that we would really truly want to do. But other times it's just because we have trained our focus to be only looking in one direction in order to preserve a certain worldview or in order to preserve a particular type of identity. And simply shining the light where it doesn't usually shine can help us understand a lot more about what it is that we really want to do and what path we really want to take through life. Now, when it comes to the life purpose, I like to think about the life purpose in terms of the truest, deepest will, which is basically what it is that you want in your heart of hearts underneath all sense of obligation and all sense of shoulds and should nots. And I like to think about your truest, deepest will as a current that is always flowing through your life all of the time, even if you've gone unconscious to the flow of that truest, deepest will. And everyone's current is fully unique to them, and it is something that even if you've gone unconscious to it, you can use shadow work to become conscious of where the flow of that river is trying to take you. And it's by following the truest, deepest will and being able to answer the question, what do I really want, that you can find your life purpose and you can find the North Star that you're really trying to move toward in your life. And when it's the case that our truest, deepest will is in our blind spot or we go unconscious to our truest, deepest will, what can happen is that we can start operating off of what should I be doing? What do I have to do? And when we move in that direction, we'll oftentimes experience a lot of friction and self-sabotage because we're essentially swimming upstream of the river of our truest, deepest will. And the way that we get back in touch with our truest, deepest will is by asking ourselves, what do I really want? But the thing is that there can be oftentimes many different blind spots that make what do I want a very difficult question to answer. And one of the main culprits of this is our thought about what do I have to do? What should I be doing? What am I supposed to be doing? All of those operate off of the illusion of obligation. Ultimately, we don't have to do anything. But the thing is, there's just certain consequences. So oftentimes we'll frame things that are actually a choice for us as a have to because we don't want the consequences that come afterward. But oftentimes reframing those sense of shoulds and should nots as like, oh, what do I want to do? So for example, if it's the case that like I'm going to a job that I hate, I might be like, oh, I have to go to this job. Well, the reality is I don't have to go to this job. I could quit the job, but then there might be just certain consequences that I don't want. Maybe it's the case that I don't want to be unemployed. And so instead of saying I have to go to the job, which is not true, I could say I want to not be unemployed. And so if you find yourself being blocked from answering the question, what do I want? You can kind of look at your shoulds and have tos and be able to find the want underneath every single one of those shoulds or have tos, because there is no such thing as a should or a have to. There's just wanted consequences and unwanted consequences. But even beyond the illusion of should or have to, our identity and our worldview and the things that we take for granted to be true can create huge blind spots for us, where we might just not even look in a certain area to be able to discover the flow of our truest, deepest will. For example, let's say that Sue is really, really attached to going into the family business, and because she's so focused on the path of going and joining her family business, maybe she doesn't even necessarily see that she might want to do something else entirely. It just has always been a foregone conclusion that that's what her future is going to be like, and she's very attached to that. And so in her attachment to that and having to do with her identity and her worldview, then she might just have certain blind spots to like actually considering other career paths. Like maybe it's the case that if she didn't have such a strong focus toward going into the family business, she would realize that she actually wants to be an architect. And so when it comes to using shadow work to become conscious of the flow of our truest, deepest will, we want to start to expand our sense of awareness about what it is that we could possibly go into. So instead of getting really narrowed down with the, oh, I'm this way and I want to do this thing, we can kind of open up the range of possibilities and see what are all of the different paths in front of us. I just wanted to mention really quick that on Saturday, July 5th, 2025, I'm going to be hosting a free live shadow work webinar called the 3 Shadow Work Secrets to Get Out of Your Own Way and Reach Your Full Potential Without Having to Fight Yourself. And if you would like to register for that free live webinar, go ahead and click the link down below in the description box. Now, in addition to being able to find the wants underneath the shoulds and should nots, and being able to look beyond your typical worldview and your typical identity to kind of use shadow work to become conscious of your life's purpose and to get more in touch with your truest, deepest will, I have another way that you can actually tap directly into the current of your truest, deepest will. One of the things that's important to note is that our motivations, the things that we want, are always about trying to move toward a particular preferred feeling state or to move away from a non-preferred feeling state. And the flow of our truest, deepest will is always moving us in the direction of our preferred feeling states. Now, this doesn't mean that we're going to feel these good feeling states along the way. There can be all sorts of different trials and tribulations and hardships and difficult feelings that we might need to go through in order to move in that direction. But ultimately, the thing that we're moving toward is something like fulfillment, or maybe there's some other feeling like excitement that really draws us down the current of that river. And so no matter how unconscious we go to the flow of our truest, deepest will, we can always look to our preferred emotional states to infer and to reverse engineer what our truest, deepest will might be. And that's because these preferred feeling states are our motor of motivation. And so if we want something, on some level, it's always about going toward those preferred feeling states. And we can also have motivations that are just about avoiding non-preferred feeling states. And that won't tell us that much about our truest, deepest will, unless directly there is a sense of, oh, I'm going away from this, and this tells me that I want this other thing. But that's a little bit more difficult to become conscious of that. What I would say is that the easiest way to become conscious of the flow of your truest, deepest will is to be able to notice what are your favorite feeling states? What are your most animating, most motivating feeling states where you're moving toward that feeling, not out of a desire to get away from some non-preferred feeling state, but just because you really enjoy that feeling state. And so if we think about feelings as almost like textures and flavors of experience, and we want to think about what are our most preferred textures and flavors of experience, similar to how if you were to answer what are your favorite foods, well, the reason why you like your favorite foods is because there's something about the texture and flavor of those foods that just feels really motivating to go toward in and of themselves. So you don't prefer your favorite foods because you're moving away from an unpleasant flavor. You actually are moving toward them because you prefer the textures and flavors of those foods. And most people are able to answer quite easily, like, what are your 5 favorite foods? They could list them out quite easily. But oftentimes what I find with clients is that when I ask them what their favorite feeling states are, is that it can be difficult to tell what are our really motivating feeling states. And this is despite the fact that emotions and feelings are our main motor of motivation. And so what I recommend is to think back on your happiest times, your best possible memories, and think about what feeling states you were feeling at the time. And this can give you a strong hint about what your favorite feeling states really are. And then once you know your favorite feeling states, you can start to reverse engineer them. For example, if I know that my favorite feeling state is wonder, I can think about all the different things that bring me wonder. So for example, it's like maybe I feel wonder when I stargaze, or maybe I feel a sense of wonder whenever it's the case that I'm doing deep inner work. And so if I want to feel wonder in my life and I want to be in alignment with my truest, deepest will, I might incorporate stargazing and deep inner work into my life. And then once you know what your favorite feeling states are, once you have like 5 or 10 down on a list, I recommend doing an exercise that I call Awakening the Dreamer. And so what this exercise is basically to get you kind of thinking in a more fantastical direction, like a more imaginative direction. So let's imagine that you were in this alternate reality where you could basically bend reality to your will. You knew that nothing negative was going to happen, like it wasn't going to impact your current life. You could just put your current life on pause. You could, essentially not age when you're in this alternate reality. And then you have a magic wand. And so you can really like bend that reality to your will, and you could live whatever kind of experience you would want to experience. And the more that you can actually depart from reality, the more that's going to tell you about what it is that you really want. So for example, I recommend, because a lot of times people will think really narrowly, and it's like, okay, I know I want this and I know I want that thing. And those are the things that we're going for in sort of our day-to-day life. But let's say, it could be something like, oh, I want pet unicorns on Jupiter, or, oh, I want to spend my time like underneath the ocean living with mermaids. And the reason why this is valuable is because it can give you a sense of what it is that you really value, what kinds of feelings you would be feeling, what kinds of activities you would be doing. And of course, even though you can't live on Jupiter and you can't live with mermaids, it's the case that in seeing that vision, you can actually start to piece it apart and analyze it and figure out what it is that you really value. And in that stark departure from reality, you can actually start to understand more about yourself and your truest, deepest will in terms of what feeling states you're really trying to move toward. And it's just the case that real life requires so much logistical thinking and, oh, what do I have to do this, and what should I do to do that, which gets us again in that illusion of shoulds and should nots and have tos, and really gets us disconnected from our sense of what do I really want. And in this exercise, what you're doing is you have 100% power and control over bringing about what it is that you truly want. And in being able to think a little bit more creatively about what that is, and to almost think in a very childlike way, it's you remove the logistical thinking and the logical thinking from things, and you start to expand the scope of knowledge about what it is that you want through creating this fantastical vision. And in awakening the dreamer archetype, you start to be able to create a vision, and you are able to then have the imagination to initiate things, as opposed to life just being like this conveyor belt of tasks that we have to do. So let's say in this awakening the dreamer exercise, I come up with a fantastical vision that I would like to spend my time floating around in space and going from planet to planet to planet. Well, I can look at that and I can say, okay, well, what is it that like makes that an appealing vision to me? Like, why is this fantastical vision appealing to me? And it's maybe there's something about a sense of freedom that's there, or a sense of being able to see a lot of different places and to go to a lot of different contexts. And of course, while I can't spend my time floating around space all the time, maybe this indicates to me that, oh, maybe I would like to travel a bit, or maybe I would like to visit a lot of different contexts, maybe not even just traveling, but just going to a lot of contexts where people are operating in different ways. Or maybe there's some kind of freedom, that I don't have in my day-to-day life that I would need to incorporate into my vision for how I want my life to be. So I recommend thinking about what are your favorite feeling states? What would you do if you had this alternate reality, you had this magic wand, you could live whatever kind of story that you would want? And again, trying to depart as much from your reality as you possibly can, because that'll help you expand your scope of awareness of what it is that really motivates you, which will help you get more into alignment with your truest, deepest will, and to understand the flow of that truest, deepest will. And then from there, you can analyze that vision to actually start kind of creating stepping stones into the life you really want. So for example, if my thing was floating around in space and that was my dreamer vision, well, then it's like, okay, well, what kind of stepping stones do I need to take in order to have the kind of freedom that showed up in that fantastical vision? Or what's a way to actually incorporate going to a lot of different contexts? For example, perhaps maybe it's the case that I want to go to a lot of different places and talk to lots of different people who have different value systems. So like maybe I might like to go to a variety of different like social gatherings. Like maybe I want to go to like a rock concert and then like an old lady knitting circle and like, because there are all sorts of different sort of micro cultures that I could just even find in my own like community. And so basically those are just some ways that I could think of to practically incorporate what came up in my dreamer vision into real life. And ultimately, stepping into that dreamer is a way of expanding your awareness, expanding your consciousness, and hence doing shadow work to shine the light on aspects of yourself that you don't typically shine the light on because, in life we just get very wrapped up in logistical thinking. Anyway, that's all I have for you for now. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead, click the like button down below and leave me a comment. Also, if you would like to come to my live webinar on Saturday, July 5th, 2025, go ahead and click the link down below in the description box and you can register for free. And if you would like to learn more about shadow work, go ahead and click this video right here. And until next time, keep becoming more you.